الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. We are continuing our reading of Allama Iqbal's Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam. Starting today from here, the problem of Islam. The problem of Islam was really suggested by the mutual conflict and at the same time mutual attraction. So mutual conflict and mutual attraction, okay, presented by two forces of religion and civilization. The same problem confronted early Christianity. How early? How early? The great one, okay. That's not very clear, but what he's talking about, the problem of Islam, meaning something which Islam addressed. So there exists a problem, and Islam made it into the object of its solution, I guess. The problem Islam was really suggested by the mutual conflict, at the same time mutually presented by two forces of religion and civilization. Now, these two forces, either these religion and civilization, or as will be clear from the later sentences, so actually the two forces he's mentioning is different, but I'm not sure. At this point, we can see that he's treating Islam here in the Western manner, or in the modernities manner of Islam, as a human artifact. And another thing to notice is this conception of two forces of religion and civilization. But as we said before, this conception of religion is invention of modernity itself. This conception of religion as something separate from civilization. It didn't even exist in Catholic Christianity, let alone in Islam. So it's basically a Protestant invention, the invention of Luther and his idealist and secular followers. So from Islamic point of view, as we say, source, Islam is a civilization. Islam is a deen. Deen. Ad-Deen. And the best some of the best translation of ad-Deen is what in Persian and Urdu we will call Nizam-e-Hayat. A system of life but by system we also means life world as well. So that's why civilization is a better translation. So Islam is a civilization. So to say that religion is one force and civilization is another force, if that's what he is saying, is already conceding ground to a crucial ground to modernity and secularism. And by secularism I mean modern secularism. Secularism has, anyway, it should become clearer as we go forward in our reading. So this the problem of Islam was really suggested by the mutual conflict and at the same time mutual attraction presented by the two forces of religion and civilization. The same problem confronted early Christianity. Okay, what's the problem? The great point in Christianity is the search of an independent content for a spiritual life, which, according to the insight of its founder, could be elevated not by the forces of the world external to the soul of man, but by the revelation of a new world within his soul. It's it's a great sentence, but what does he mean? The same problem can early Christianity. The great point of Christianity is search of an independent content for spiritual life. Okay, let's think a bit about it. So one thing is, it's talking about Christianity. And obviously Christianity and a particular conception of Christianity and a particular attitude towards Christianity is hallmark of all modernists, including Muslim modernists, and generally modernists have a hostile attitude towards Christianity. Similarly, Muslim modernists as well, at least the early Muslim modernists. But here Iqbal is praising Christianity. But the first question we should be asking, which Christianity he is talking about? Even though he's saying early Christianity, but what he is attributing to Christianity applies not to early Christianity for sure, neither to Catholicism for that matter, but it's more typical of a Protestant Christianity, or especially Luther. And we have some videos on Luther. You can watch them or listen to them if you want more on that. So what he's saying about Christianity applied to Protestant version of Christianity. So already sort of a modernist, in a way, modernist Christianity, or Christianity as an ideology of modernism. That's the first thing. Second thing is he's talking about Jesus Christ, Yesu Masih, or Hazrat Masih alayhi salam wa ala nabiyyina wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. He's calling Hazrat Masih alayhi salam the founder of Christianity. But that obviously is not the Islamic point of view or Quranic point of view, because according to Islam, according to the Quran, Masih alayhi salam is not the founder of Christianity. He is the messenger of God, who came as a messenger and mujaddid, to Bani Israel, mainly to purify the law of Moses of the rigidity and the barrenness which had accrued to it due to the later development in it by Jewish scholars. And obviously the religion or deen of Musa alayhi salam is not Judaism either. So as Isa alayhi salam came as a Masih alayhi salam came as a revivalist and the purifier of the message of Moses. And he needed to do that due to the later development after the departure of the Moses alayhi salam. So one of the things he wanted to revive was spirituality. The issues related to soul, alongside the issues which were already there related to body. So original Moses teaching included teachings about body, the law, but also teachings about soul, That's what spirituality is. We call it tasawwuf, which is basically about akhlaq, good manners, and ihsan, excellence, and which builds on the law. So the mission of the Masih alayhi salam was to revive the law and infuse it with the spirit, and also revive akhlaq and revive ihsan. That was his specific. So it is understandable that he emphasized what is calling a spiritual side, because that's what he came to revive. Law wasn't abandoned, so he didn't need to specifically do too much about it, except to say that he hasn't come to, abandon the law, but he wants to revive their spirituality and infuse its spirit back into the law. So it's easy to mistake Masih alayhi salam's mission as the mission of his spirituality, because spirituality divorced from law becomes, a great window for shaitan, as law divorced from spirituality becomes a window for a different type of shaitan. And it is understandable that people mistook some of the saying of the Masih alayhi salam as criticizing the law. In a similar way, for example, in our scholars, obviously there's no comparison. Masih alayhi salam is a messenger, but just to make the point, when Imam Ghazali wrote Ihya ul-Ulum, he is himself the top faqih, Shafi faqih. So, but he criticizes fiqh and fuqaha and the law in Ihya. But he is not criticizing fiqh and faqih as such. How can he does that? Because that's more than half Islam. What he is doing is, he is doing the same. His criticism is the same which Masih al-Islam was criticizing the Jewish law for. The separation of the law and spirituality. Because when the law and the spirituality is separate, then the law becomes just a form without a soul. Just a body without a soul. So the point is not to divorce soul from body or spirituality from law, but to infuse them with each other and make spirituality the light in which the law abundances change into good manners and excellence and love and mercy. So that's the context in which he is talking about, but obviously he is already, at this point anyway, bought into the old story that Masih al-Islam emphasizes spirituality, ignores body. On the other hand, yes, later Christianity might have done that, especially the some of Protestant Christianity, and it's correct to say that Islam tries to, unite these two quests and weave them into an organic whole. But to make that point, we shouldn't buy into the false narrative that Masih al-Islam was the message of Masih al-Islam was any different from Islam. Okay. So the great point in Christianity, so I'll say here that Christianity, even though he's talking about early Christianity, what he actually is in fact talking about is what he's saying is only applied to a particular type of Protestant Christianity. In fact, not even Protestantism as a religion, but the teachings of some of the teachings of Luther, which didn't necessarily become part of established Protestant churches later. Rather, they became part of the theories and rhetoric of the modernist and secular philosophers. So the great point of Christianity is the search for an independent content for a spiritual life. So what does he mean by independent content for a spiritual life? Or what it could be meant? What it could mean for independent content. Or for the life of soul. And not just soul, but our whole inner world, which include, self of different types, etc., as well as soul. And what does one mean when one says independent content for spiritual life? Like independent of body? So the code for body is law, not in the modern sense, but in the sense of fiqh, because fiqh deals with the body and the movement of bodies, but not exclusively, because fiqh has because there's no body without life and self and soul. So fiqh already is infused with a spiritual sense. But it is possible to concentrate on the form of the law and ignore its spiritual side. On the other hand, soul has its own requirements separate from body. As body has its requirements separate from soul. But that doesn't mean that soul and body can exist without each other in human form. So, independent content for a spiritual life can positively mean the teachings which are specific to soul, or which fulfill the specific needs of the soul as against the need of the body, or something like that. At worst, somebody could say that soul is totally separate from body. So then soul's requirements are in conflict with the body requirements. So in that sense, the spiritual life of the soul is totally different from, so its requirements and the teaching needed for it are totally independent of the teaching needed for body. So, but that's the sort of dualism which Islam rejects. Islam rejects dualism of body and soul, but it also rejects the view that soul is a function of body or something like that. So we can take independent content in a positive way as well as in a negative way, I guess. So the same problem confronted early Christianity. The great point in Christianity is the search for an independent content for spiritual life, which according to the insight of its founder. So we reject this claim that Masih alayhi salam is the founder of Christianity. I mean, I don't know, maybe Paul was the founder of Christianity, but Masih alayhi salam came with the only true religion, which is Islam. And he came to revive the teaching of Musa alayhi salam. So he wasn't independent prophet in that sense. So his message wasn't independent. He came as a mujaddid within the Sharia, within the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam. The same problem confronted early Christianity. The great point in Christianity is the search for an independent content for a spiritual life, which according to the insight of its founder could be elevated. That is, the spiritual life could be elevated not by the forces of the external world, not by the forces of a world external to the soul, but by the revelation of a new world within his soul. So he's probably talking about the idea that kingdom of God is within and not outside. The Augustinian idea. I mean, obviously, Augustine idea is very complex, but some people can understand that from Augustinian discourse. So let's see. So the great point of, so we reject that it has anything to do with Masih al-Islam. So just to understand what he's saying, the great point in Christianity is search for an spiritual life, according to the founder. According to insight, could be elevated not by the forces. So soul is spiritual life. And this spiritual life, external world, or as Luther say, good works, has no effect on soul. A spiritual life and its fulfillment doesn't depend on external world at all. You can create kingdom of God here in your soul without, irrespective of the external world. Obviously, this is not the teaching of Masih al-Islam. Masih al-Islam, of course, says that kingdom of God should be established within our soul if it is to be sustained in the external world. But Masih al-Islam's message is to create a kingdom of God within this world, external world. and kingdom of God in the soul is also to be established. But they nourish from each other. They are inseparable from each other. And ad-deen is all for Allah, kulluhu lillah, whether it is in soul or on body or in the external world or in the internal world. And this separation of external and internal world, this divorce of external and internal world is the innovation of Augustine and his followers. And as we know, Luther was one of the greatest followers of Augustine in the early modern era. So he, in a sense, revived Augustinian doctrine and drew sort of and interpreted Augustinian doctrine in a radical way in which even Augustine never did. And Luther, if we read some of the works of Luther, it becomes clear that kingdom of God has nothing to do with the external world. It's neither depends on the external world nor is reflected in the external world as such. That only exists within this relationship between self, myself, to another self, which he imagined is God. But if every external limits are, you don't express it externally, neither any external world has any effect on it, so that becomes the emptiness of your own self, really, self to self. This extreme interiorization of subjectivity is the hallmark of a sort of modernist Christianity, to which some of the things Iqbal is saying is actually belong. Okay, so the same problem confronted early Christianity, and the great point in Christianity is the search for an independent content for a spiritual life, which, according to the insight of its founder, could be elevated not by the forces of world external to the soul of man, but the revolution of a new world within his soul. Islam fully agrees with this insight and supplements it by further insight. Okay, we'll come to Islam next time, and we'll then maybe what we said about Christianity would need to be reformulated as well. Thank you.